Welcome back to La Pausa, a Pints and Punditry podcast here at the Pitchside Pub. This is episode 13, coming to you on Monday, March 4th, 2024. Season's winding down, folks. We saw a derby that had massive implications. We had controversies all over Europe, and I was going to talk about those today. The Pulisic controversy and the death threats that he got, the controversy with Real Madrid and Jude Bellingham's goal being called off. That one was a mess. Chelsea fans chanting Ruben Abramovich's name, which is sort of disgusting. A lot of really negative stuff that I didn't want to talk about. And, well, frankly, it's my podcast and my channel, so I'm not going to. But don't worry, I've got a controversial topic for you because the UEFA has announced the changes that are coming to the Champions League next year. And apparently, they weren't all that well known to the general footballing fandom world, even though I knew about them, and we've talked about them on this channel for a while, and they've been out there in the public domain for a while. But apparently a lot of people did not know these changes were coming because UEFA dropped a video today explaining the changes, and people are sort of up in arms about it. So we're going to talk about it because I like the changes, and I'm going to explain why. But before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, go ahead and follow the podcast. Get in that comment section. I love to hear the comments. It's the whole point of this channel is to have the banter back and forth. So get in that comment section. Let me know what you think. Do you like the Champions League changes? Did you like it how it was? Do you want to do away with the Champions League altogether? Maybe you're a pro Super League kind of person. However, whatever you think, get in that comment section. Let me know. And of course, if you don't already, follow us on Twitter at Pitchside Pub. We can have the conversation there. So UEFA is changing the Champions League. They are expanding it from 32 teams to 36 teams, and of course, more teams means more games. And that, in and of itself, is a problem because the calendar is already crowded. There are too many fixtures, the schedule is crowded as can be, and it's leading to more injuries. And this is pretty much a given in any league across the world. Injuries are out of control, teams are playing too many games, the players are getting run to the ground, and so that in and of itself makes these changes unnecessary. The Champions League and UEFA did not need changing in that regard, but there is money at stake, and we have to accept the inevitability that these things are going to change. There was also a time when the Champions League was not called the Champions League. There was a time when the top tier in England was the Championship, was not the Premier League. The Conference League didn't exist until a few years ago. So the change is inevitable, and all we can really ask is that it keeps the sporting spirit alive, the competitive spirit. It creates and facilitates the potential for actual competition and sport. And I think this does this. So while I would argue that these changes were unnecessary, I don't hate them, and I'm not all that against them, and they don't add that many more games. So it's not that big of a deal, other than the fact that this is an ongoing problem that didn't need 2 more games. But what they're doing is they're going from 32 teams to 36 teams, and they're eliminating the group phase where the teams were divided into pots of 4, and you played all 3 teams in your group twice for 6 games. Now it's going to be 36 teams in one big pot, and you're going to play 8 games. Now, here's where UEFA screwed up. They're calling the new group stage, they're calling it the league stage. And that's a problem because it is so obvious that they are competing with the potential Super League, and they are holding on for dear life against that concept. But the common reaction from fans was, oh, you're just copying the Super League. Well, that's partly because you called it the league phase. That's a bad name for this, and I harp on this kind of stuff because the public perception of UEFA matters. The way the fans respond to this matters. If fans remain in love with the Champions League, it makes a Super League less likely. And a Super League is probably coming, they just need to get the format right. But the more people love the Champions League, the less viable it makes a Super League. So if the public perception, incorrect as it may be, is, oh, you're just trying to make your own Super League, well, that's a problem. It's also incorrect, because the inherent flaw with the Super League that all these big club presidents got wrong was making it a closed league. And these big clubs buy their way in and they can never leave. And that flies in the face of the entire European soccer community and the pyramid system, which is fantastic and I wish existed in American sports. And you're flying in the face of it. You're spitting right on it. And that felt like a personal attack to the fans. This does not, because the Champions League is open and remains open. And if you didn't watch it yet, go watch UEFA's announcement video that came out today, which is why I'm talking about this today. They did such a good job putting this video out. A phenomenal job. And people are saying it's confusing. Well, the format may be a little confusing, but this video explains it perfectly. So if you're confused, go watch it. They did a fantastic job of shooting this, editing it, the graphics, it's concise. As a person who is both a marketing executive in my real life and spends his spare time editing videos for public consumption, this is my wheelhouse. And I'm telling you, 10s across the board, they nailed it. So even if you don't like the changes, you have to applaud the effort of the video they just put out, which matters. Again, these seem like little things, but this is how the general public consumes this information. And so many people today were just learning about these changes through this video. So the way it's portrayed matters immensely, because UEFA is not always looked upon as the most popular organization. Luckily, they have the FIFA contingent, which is just a dumpster fire. So compared to them, they are doing a good job. But UEFA is not always looked at positively. And so the way they package this kind of announcement, even though the information's been out there, this is the one that's going to get 1 billion views. And so it matters. It matters, and they did a really good job. Now, you don't have to like the format. The extra games, again, are a problem. But what they're trying to do is eliminate the part of the group stage that doesn't really make too much difference, right? When the pot 1 team has already clinched and then rolls out their backups for the final game of the group stage. And what happened? That happens every year, where you get these group stage games that really don't mean anything because one or both of the team's fate is already sealed. They're trying to eliminate that, and they've done it. And that's sort of why I like this change. So they're putting all 36 teams into one big pot, but they're still going to have them into seeding buckets, and you're going to play a team from each bucket, and you're going to play them a couple times. So that's going to get you your 8 games. You're going to do a home and home against somebody from your own bucket, somebody from bucket 2, somebody from bucket 3, somebody from bucket 4. But all the games are going to matter because you're all in one giant table with 36 teams. So there's going to be a lot of tiebreakers. Goal differential is going to matter. Goals scored is probably going to matter. And your record, even going into the last game, is probably going to matter, because the difference between 7-0-1 versus 6-1-1 is going to make a huge difference. That could be the difference between being a 7 seed or a 12 seed. And so they have accomplished their goal. And that's always one of my issues, is when organizations make changes to a competition to accomplish a goal, and then they make a rule that doesn't even accomplish that goal. And this does. So I applaud them for that. And I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this format. I don't like the fact that it added 2 extra games, but I'm fine with the format. If it wasn't for the extra games, if there were already 8 games in the group stage, then I would say this is a better way to do it. And I like it. It also takes out some of the randomness of who's in your group, although I guess the randomness of who you play from each pot is still there. But all in all, this is a positive. And then from there, it remains the same into the round of 16, round of 8, round of 4, or semifinals, as you call it, and then the finals. So after that, it's largely the same. But the problem they made is calling it the league phase. They're going to have to change that, because the immediate response was, oh, this is just another Super League. And everyone has overlooked the fact that, no, it's not a Super League because it is open. And the Champions League is open to anybody. And you know, if you don't believe that, then look no further than Girona, who's going to get a Champions League spot this year, or Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, who looks like they're going to land one. And you know, yes, it does go to the big money teams more often than not, but so does winning your league title. And so that's just the nature of European football at this point. And I don't know that UEFA has the power to control that, at least not by changing the Champions League rules, that's for sure. So within the framework they have to work with, I think this works, and I like the change. And more importantly, I really like how they packaged it. Now, comparing it to the Super League, and is this enough to fend off the Super League? Are these changes to the Champions League enough to fend off the Super League? It will be if the Super League remains adamant on being a closed system. That is what the Super League does not understand. For whatever reason, they are disregarding the importance of the pyramid and of the promotion and relegation system when it comes to the Super League. And I understand why they're doing it, but it's horribly ignorant and naive for people who have no excuse but to know better. They're guaranteeing this position because for these clubs to make this move, they're going to need some sort of guarantee. These clubs are not going to alienate their fan base and alienate their domestic organizations and everything else, and get the stigma of being one of the clubs that jumped to the Super League without some guarantee of the revenue dollars that are going to come. Additionally, if the Super League wants to charge a lot of money to a TV provider, to a network, to get that big contract, because that's where all the money comes from, they think they need to promise that the big names will be in there, that you'll get Real Madrid versus PSG 4 times a year, or something along those lines. What they fail to realize is that they don't need that. The Premier League got the biggest contract in the world because they are open. Because, with teams like Luton Town in their league, they're still getting billions upon billions of dollars. So I am not an anti-Super League guy if it's done right, in terms of there being a larger competition that is a step above La Liga and Serie A and Ligue 1 and whoever else in the European pyramid, assuming that it's open to everybody. And that's the key. I'm not against there being a multi-nation league, and I know that is sacrilege to a lot of European folks, and believe me, I understand. And if I was born in Spain, maybe I would be against it, or in Italy. That might be a case where me being an American and not being immersed in the culture of a small club might make a difference. Because I get a lot of hate as an American, American soccer fan. I said that on purpose. But as an American football fan, I get a lot of hate for not understanding certain things. I really do understand it. It just doesn't resonate with me as much because I haven't been immersed in it. But as an outsider looking in on your sport, and I'll be the first to say that, I'd be okay with a larger league that spans over a few nations, assuming it is open, assuming the competition is available to anybody. And I would even argue, and I may do so in another video, that some of these leagues need to band together and create something like that if they want to compete with the Premier League. It is clear that La Liga and Serie A and France and Portugal and the Netherlands and you could lump Germany in there, except they refuse to ever change, but that they could use the strength in numbers approach to compete with the Premier League because they have fallen behind the Premier League financially. The TV contract makes all the difference, and the best players go to England. And you're seeing the 10th wealthiest English team outbid AC Milan for a player. That's not a thing that ever would have happened 10 years ago. And so they are going to have to do something, but it is going to have to be an open system or else it doesn't work and it'll never have my support. And that's why this Champions League, one, is not just another Super League, and two, why it will remain in favor. And as long as the Super League remains a closed system concept, the Champions League will be popular. When the Champions League needs to worry is if they concede and they're willing to do a Super League, a multi-nation Super League that is open and is another, to this point, non-existent step on the European pyramid. That's when the Champions League might have to worry, and changes like this are not going to help them. Because if we can get those matchups, the beauty of the Champions League is you get these matchups you don't get that often, right? We're going to see hopefully a Manchester City Real Madrid game this year. That will be the game of the year by almost any metric or standard. Well, if we get that more often, you don't need the Champions League. We can get that somewhere else. Not that I expect English teams to join a Super League ever, even if it is open, but you get my point. There is also something to be said for overexposure of these matchups. And that's the other thing that the Super League is failing to understand. If you give me Real Madrid versus PSG 4 times a year, it's not that special. But if you give it to me in the semifinals of the Champions League, I'm dropping everything to watch that one. If you get too much exposure to even the best competition, it gets stale. It's not special anymore. Seeing Bayern Munich take on Barcelona is the legendary sort of stuff that these games are made of, that these stories are made of, these competitions are made of. Well, if you have it 3 times a year in a Super League, it loses a lot of its luster. So there's pros and cons to a Super League, but that's the beauty of the Champions League, is you get these little snippets of greatness on greatness. And so as long as that remains, I don't see the Champions League going anywhere, and I like these changes. I think these changes are good. I'm worried about the extra games, but 2 more games at this point is a drop in the bucket. And I like the format. I think it'll keep the group stage more relevant, but it is not another Super League. If your response to seeing this is, oh, it's another Super League, go back and watch it again because you aren't paying attention. It is not that at all. And UEFA, you need to change the name and not call it the league stage, because that's what's hurting you. That's what's causing this misunderstanding among fans. So go watch the video. Go watch what UEFA put out. They did a fantastic job. It should help you understand it. I thought the video was very clear. I couldn't believe I saw pundits I respect on Twitter saying, oh, that helps. Now I'm not confused. Well, you shouldn't be. If you're paying attention, you shouldn't be. It's pretty clear. It's pretty easy to understand. So go watch that video and then let me know your thoughts down in the comments on these Champions League changes. Do you like them? Do you like it the old way? Do you want to get rid of the Champions League? Are you a pro Super League kind of person? Would you make different changes? Anything you want to comment on, get down in that comment section. I would love to hear you. And make sure while you're there, you're subscribing to the channel on YouTube, subscribing to the podcast on Spotify, and of course, follow us on Twitter at Pitchside Pub. Thanks as always for joining us here on La Pausa, a Pints and Punditry podcast at the Pitchside Pub.